Welcome into League of Our Own with myself, Goran Paladin, and Adam Blair. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is League of Our Own, two Kiwis talking Kiwi Rugby League. And Blairy, we've got two massive questions that we need to answer in today's episode. One of them being, can the Warriors make a grand final without Luke Metcalf? But first of all, the most burning question of the lot, who replaces Luke Metcalf in the number 7 jersey for the rest of the season, mate?
Oh man, I guess Goran, it's good to be here again. First and foremost, before we start, going and diving into this thing, I obviously want to wish Luke Metcalf a speedy recovery.
Of course, yeah.
Obviously, it hasn't been what he has wanted.
No.
Rugby league's a crazy game, and he was in such good form. I reckon I could say he's right up there with Dallin, right up the top there in the list, and to get another injury to hinder his season again, it's disappointing for the club first and foremost, and then also himself in the way that he's carried himself over the last 17 rounds. I thought he's been the most consistent, I guess, on the field that I've seen him play because of he's been injury free. Unfortunately, with the game of rugby league, Goran, these things do happen, and it's really sad to see. But he will come back bigger, better, and stronger. So hopefully, Luke Metcalf, if he's listening, brother, all the very best of your recovery, and hopefully everything goes well and you're back out in the field and working hard again. So yeah, we just wish him luck from the League of Our Own podcast.
Yeah, well said, mate.
The questions, man, yeah, tough one. I think. We all, I think ourselves, and including the fans, love Te Maire Martin.
Yeah.
Love Te Maire Martin, and I think he's a quality player. And I've said that that many times over our podcast over the last few episodes on how I think he's a starting half. But we go and see his versatility, and you hear someone like Coach Webster speak about how important Te Maire Martin is to the team, from going to play and line up as a hooker, could play in the lock forward position, can jump into a centre, can also play in the halves, and also played at fullback, which we saw him do against the Brisbane Broncos. But there's someone like Tanah Boyd, who they bought from the Gold Coast Titans, who I think, and this is just my opinion, Goran, I think that he will take the 7 jersey and kick on for the rest of the season. It's unfortunate, I think. When I think about Te Maire, I think he is a half. He is a starting half in this competition. But I think his best position right now is the utility, his versatility, and what he can give. If you don't have Kurt Catewell, you've got Te Maire Martin, who can cover pretty much the similar positions. I don't know if I'll play him at back row, but he can play everything else. I think the one thing that makes things different, I think, with Tanah Boyd and Te Maire Martin, even Chanel Harris-Tavita, is Tanah Boyd's kicking game. I think he's most probably one of the better kickers there behind Luke Metcalf, and I think that's what they're going to most probably head towards coming off the back of the bye, but they've got, a week and a bit to try and decide on who's going to be the best placement for them. For me, I think Tanah Boyd slips into the 7 jersey for the Warriors moving forward.
Look, I'm a huge supporter of Te Maire Martin. Now, I think on face value, if you just put the two up against each other and said, who's your starting halfback out of Boyd and Martin, I would think that most people would go with Te Maire Martin. He's got runs on the board in terms of experience in the game over a longer period of time. He went to a grand final in 2017 with the North Queensland Cowboys as a starting half. When you look at Tanah Boyd, he had, I think, first grade appearances across 6 seasons with the Gold Coast Titans. Only one of those seasons did the Gold Coast Titans make the top 8. They finished 8th in 2021. They were one and done, bundled out in the first week of the finals in that year, and Boyd wasn't even part of the squad. I think they had halves like Jamal Fogarty was a starting half. They also had Toby Sexton in the mix as well. And so Tanah Boyd didn't get a look in 2021, only 6 first-grade appearances that season. So he hasn't had the experience of a Te Maire Martin, both in terms of first-grade hitouts and finals experience. And yeah, you might say that Tamari's experience was a long, long time ago, going with the North Queensland Cowboys to that grand final, but at least he had the experience.
Yeah.
Plus, there's an X factor thing that I like with TMM. I believe that he has that in abundance, whereas, you point to the kicking game of Tanah Boyd, which is very important, of course it is, and you see all the great halves have a very long and successful kicking game, and he will bring that, but he will not bring an X factor that will set the Warriors alight. But I say that's on surface value.
Yeah.
Right? When you dig a little bit deeper and you try and think about how Andrew Webster is thinking and the people that he's got at his disposal, I really believe that he will go with Tanah Boyd in the 7 jersey. And so let's look at who are the unavailables at the moment, Blairy. You've got no CNK, who has dodged a massive bullet, by the way, it must be said. When he crumpled underneath that tackle and trying to stop the try on half-time, I thought he was gone for the season as well. To think that we've only lost him for 2 games. It amounts to 2 games. He'll be back in a couple of weeks, basically. That is an absolute godsend, isn't it? So you don't have him until round 21. You also are without Ali Leiataua until round 21. And then I believe that Dallin Watene-Zelezniak comes back in round 22. So when you're considering all of these things, Te Martin doesn't make your starting 13.
Yeah, well, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't.
You touched on it earlier. The versatility in this instance is killing him, man.
To his own fault, eh?
Yeah.
To his own fault that he can cover so many different positions, which is the big reason why I think he won't make the starting team. And the credit has to go to him that he can. All the credit has to go to him. He's such a talented player, and like you said, he oozes X factor. You sometimes don't know what you're going to get from Te Martin, to the point sometimes I don't think he knows. But something always good happens around him when he has the ball in hand, and I guess that's his biggest strengths. But I also think it is also his weakness, because he's so versatile at everything he does. He can do 4 or 5 different positions pretty well and get a job done for the club. So yeah, I just guess my thinking is Tanah Boyd. As this competition nears the end, Goran, and the importance of the kicking game and playing the long game, I think that's where they end up going towards Tanah Boyd and backing his kicking, his long kicking game to be able to put it long down the corner for Rocco Berry to chase and just jam teams down there. Because I think as the season gets tougher and these games become more critical and the wins become more important, someone like Tanah Boyd's kicking game could put them in the good place, or just his precision with his kicking. Something like Lekahala Sima can get things off it. So I think that's where they'll end up going. Again, that's just our opinion. He may think something different, but I definitely think, on just through my head thinking, is that's where he ends up going.
I reckon he's cursing the name of his good hunting buddy, Dylan Walker, right now, because we're not talking like this if Dylan
Correct.
Walker is still at the New Zealand Warriors. If he remains, if he doesn't go back to Australia for personal reasons on compassionate grounds, then we aren't playing Te Martin as the 14. We're not seeing the versatility as much as we are, and he's brought in as the 7. End of story. But because there is no Dylan Walker, they needed to find somebody to fill that role, and Te Martin has done that really well. And the opportunities he's been given, he's been outstanding. So you can't sacrifice that now.
He's been their best 14 this year because he sat on that bench a fair bit, covered for Wade, and obviously we saw on the weekend with the Brisbane Broncos what positions he played and how well he did a job, to be honest. So, it's unfortunate for Te Martin, like you said. If Dylan Walker was there, he's rolling in that 7 jumper, and that's his. And I think we've seen what he can do from his last time when him and Chanel, or it was at the time Charnze,
that's right,
playing in that position, and they got a job done together up against a quality Penrith Panthers side up in Magic Round that year. So Yeah, it's unfortunate, but they're going to need all hands on deck going into the back end of the season.
I mentioned earlier about Tanah Boyd's experience with the Gold Coast Titans and how he wasn't part of a team that was successful, essentially. They finished a lot of the time outside of the top 8, down the bottom end of the table. But what might this guy be able to achieve in a team that is near the top of the table? They are 4 points off top, the Warriors. They are in the top 4. And if you surround him with a lot of experienced players, a lot of quality players, led by James Fisher-Harris, you got the deception of Wade Egan as well, possibly, maybe, on the back of some really outstanding New South Wales Cup form as well. It must be said,
definitely.
he's kicking at 80 or 81%, so he's taking the shots at goals. I think he's come up with something like 16 try assists.
Yeah.
I believe he's yet to lose as well. He may have been absent for their loss earlier in the year. So this is a guy who's come through a successful New South Wales Cup season to this point and put the New Zealand Warriors on top of the table by 5 points. 5 points to second spot. They're going great guns. Now you put them in a side that, okay, they've tasted a little bit of defeat in the last few weeks, but for the majority of the NRL season, they've been flying high, man. So you put him in that system, that setup, and who knows what he might be able to do.
I think they're chasing 12 straight games, 12 straight wins, and a big part of those wins, you're having to have played pretty good as a team, but as individuals. And we all know how important the spine players are. Your two halves, your hook and your fullback. So he's played a big part in what they've done. I think it's great to I guess for him, this is how a lot of opportunities are created. Hey, Goran, between someone playing so well that they cannot not just be selected, they've got to be in the team, to maybe an injury occurring, which is unfortunate for the person that gets the injury. But this is how most people get their opportunity to get their shot. And we haven't seen him wearing the NRL colours yet. Well, he's wearing the Warriors colours, but we haven't seen him in the NRL team yet. And you spoke about his past and his history of not being in a successful environment. But I think I put him in the same category as Aaron Clark. Hey, Aaron Clark has come from the Gold Coast Titans. Similar, obviously, very similar with what they've done with their journey. You put them in an environment where it's successful and they're playing with great energy and they're winning games. Mentality change, the way you carry yourself, the way you play, it changes. So I think he fits in real easy. He's obviously understanding how the systems work over there, the flow of how they want to attack, the way they want to play. If they're playing the long game, putting into the corners. So he's ready to go. Ready to go.
And we're in agreement. Tanah Boyd is the guy who gets the job as the number 7, and Te Maire Martin is a victim of circumstance. If Dylan Walker was still there, he would be the starting 7, but he's done himself in because of his versatility. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the makeup of the backline as well, before we talk about whether they can make a grand final and go on and win it. The makeup of the Warriors backline, what that might look like in the absolute short term. Keep in mind, as I said earlier, we get back Charnze and Ali Leiataua in round 21, and Dallin Watene-Zelezniak comes back in round 22. So we're only looking at the next sort of 2 or 3 games. If we've got Tanah Boyd partnering Chanel in the halves, I'm suggesting, and I don't know what your thoughts are, I'm literally throwing this to you on the fly, but I reckon we put Kurt Capewell in the centres for those few games, just because of the lack of availability in our outside backs there. So Kurt Capewell becomes a full-time centre for the foreseeable future. You use Rocco Berry as the other centre. You have wingers, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck as one. You push Adam Pompey out to another wing, and then Taine Tuaupiki plays his preferred position of fullback. And we can talk about whether Taine plays one or Roger plays one, or maybe they just switch as the game goes on. But I feel like that's probably the strongest look when you take into account the strength and the depth in the prop forwards and the back rowers. You could move Kurt Capewell and you don't lose a great deal, and maybe you bring in somebody like Leiataua, who's been playing really well in Cup as well. How do you feel about that kind of backline for the Warriors over the next couple of weeks?
I think that's a safe choice. I think that's the safest choice. I think with the experience and the knowledge of the game with Kurt Capewell, we've seen what he's done this year for the Warriors and the way he's filled into that position and pretty much kind of made it his own without being his own position. I do like the whole move of Pompey going to wing. Like, he needs to be in the team. I think he's been playing well enough. I also like the idea of Taine playing at the back. That's his preferred position. He's not a winger. He was makeshifting a winger position for the time being while Dallin was sitting on the sideline. So I guess I'm like you. I think it's Taine at the back. I think it's Roger and Pompey on the wings. I think it's Capewell at centre. With the big dog Rocco Berry, and that's kind of your back five for the next few weeks until the artillery comes back in. And I think that's much really your safest and your best defensive back five, but also the strengths of how they can carry the ball back and bring the ball back. I like Taine Tuaupiki at the back because, again, we may have mentioned this early through our episodes about, similar to Keanu Kinney, vast, good feet, smaller, can get a lot of penalties through just ducking under tackles these days and making himself hard to handle. So I do like what you've mentioned, and I've seconded what you said. So I think that's the safest. I think Leiataua is still a fair way out, I'm sorry to say it, but I just don't think Edward Corsi has cut it. I don't think Edward Corsi has cut the winger spot, and someone like Pompey could do a really good job there. And if you had to, obviously, Taine's done it before. But I like Taine at fullback, Roger on the wing, because I think Roger's a good winger as well. But obviously he's got versatility, and both players can play both positions. So, I think that's their strongest back five moving forward.
I'd love to know, I don't have Andrew Webster's number, but I'd love to know why he picked Ed Corsi over Taine Tuaupiki for the Broncos. Because, mate, he's copping a lot of flack and heat in the message boards and things like that for his performance. And I think a lot of it is fair. I think a lot of it is fair, Blairy. He bombed a certain try. It comes back to something you said a number of weeks ago about Bunty R4. Yeah, he's kind of got like one string to the bow. It's a hell of a string, but he needs to develop a few other aspects to his game. I feel the same about Ed Corsi after watching him against the Broncos. Yeah, he's a big body and he can steamroll players, but there's no finesse. There's not much else to his performance, and I think that's why a lot of Warriors supporters were infuriated by what they saw. I don't expect to see Ed Corsi in first grade again, and that's why I've in my imaginary team, in my hypothetical team, he doesn't feature. And I shift Adam Pompey out to the wing because Ed Corsi simply isn't up to standard.
Yeah, it's so hard with those guys. The biggest thing for me, Goran, and I said it about the young bench and the inexperience that they had. If you're not getting consistent time in first grade, really hard to build any sort of momentum.
Yeah.
Any sort of momentum. The competition in New South Wales Cup, I get it, it's tough, but it's not the NRL. And if you're not in the team consistently week in, week out, how do you build confidence? How do you build any sort of connection? And you can do it all at training all you like. But when you come up against some of the best wingers in the competition, the best players in the competition, you need to turn up in the best shape, the best mindset, and be able to execute your job to the best of your ability. And like you said, there'd be people, throwing a few stones over at Edward Corsi due to his performance.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting on the fence here. I do think that he's been in the system for a while, but hasn't really kicked on. What are the Warriors doing to help him be the best winger that he can be? So I put this back on the coaching the coaching staff, the people around him, his education around the game, and what they want from Edward Kosi, whether it's you're a finisher or your card carries, which one, what's your job as a winger? Because you see him sometimes, and sometimes the things he does, you just think that's not NRL level. That's not NRL standard. You may get away with that at New South Wales Cup, but at NRL level, you can't. So I actually feel for him a bit. I feel for him a bit because I don't know if has reached his potential or he's just plateaued because he hasn't been educated or given all the tools he can. But that's me from afar saying that. I'm not in the inner sanctum. I don't know what happens day to day with Edward Kosi. But from my observation, and I think everyone would be in the same boat, he's not at that NRL level.
It's a great point that you make because it's not just entirely on the player to develop those extra strings to the bow. And so a coach needs to take the player aside and say, I love what you do here. You're a devastating carrier of the ball. However, have you seen so-and-so, he's got an offload, or this guy's got a step. And so let's try and develop these things. In your career, who were some of the players that come to the top of your mind there, or the front of mind, where they changed their wing play to give themselves longevity in the game? Is there anyone that just springs to mind for you?
Well, you know what I think with individuals, Goran, you have to have the want to be the best player you can be. You have to have the drive, the motivation, make the sacrifices, put in the work, put in the time, ask questions, ask for help. Again, like you said, it's not always on the player, but there's an expectation that for an individual that you need to go and seek help. If you're just happy to be where you are, then you will stay where you are. The coaches are always there. I get that as well. But as an individual, when you watch a film, who are you watching? Who do you want to, emulate when you're playing? Yes, you want to be Edward Kosi. Yes, you want to be Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. But what is your point of difference?
Yeah.
What is your point of difference, Ed Kosi? What is your point of difference, Roger? I think someone like Roger, who's been able to transition from a few different positions. Would have had to try and master a centre position, didn't work out. Winger, I think, is quite similar to a fullback. He started as a wing, moved around to fullback position when he was at the Roosters. So those are Charnze. He's played in the halves. He's played on the wing. He's played in centre. He's played in fullback. So you've always had to learn to be able to develop your game and try and go to that next level. Some people just don't have that want or that drive to get to those heights, and I just don't think it's for everyone. It's not for everyone, Goran. Rugby league's not for everyone. It's not the be-all, end-all. There are some people that are more passionate than others. There are some people that make way more commitment than others. There's some people that work behind closed doors where no one's watching. But not everyone does that because it's a hard game. It's one of the toughest games in the world because there's so much pressure individually on yourself, personal pressure, pressure from the outside, pressure from your coaches and your teammates. And the biggest one, obviously, I said it, yourself. And the two guys that I mentioned, Roger and Charnze, are most probably, people that you can put your head on and saying they've done more to be able to try and excel in all those positions.
And the benefit is, for Ed, he's got those two guys at his club right now. So this is the time to learn. This is the time to evolve. And unfortunately, that's not what we saw up against the Broncos at Suncorp Stadium. There wasn't an evolution of Ed Kosi. It was the same, but just nowhere near up to standard.
Well, I guess I'm not putting this person in the same caliber, but back in the day, Manu Vatuvei, what was his strengths, Goran?
Carrying the ball.
Yeah, back fence, strong carries. Yeah. But that's when the game was the way it was. Now the game's changed and it's a new evolution of young talent coming through. And the biggest thing for me, for our new generation of players coming through, is X factor. What do you bring different, or what is your point of difference as a winger? We know what point of difference Brian To'o has. We know what Lomax has. You know what I mean? We know what Days can do. We know what Roger
Yeah.
can bring. So you have to have something different to the other winger. And we all know you're supposed to catch high balls. We all know you're supposed to finish tries. But the game has changed where just running straight when you've got some of the best defenders in the competition week in, week out isn't enough. Enough to get you through the NRL.
Well, just quickly on Manu, I remember a game, and I'm not sure if you do, but I remember a game, may have even been against the Eels, where Manu had a shocker with his hands, and the coach, was it Ivan Cleary at the time, just decided, look, I'm going to leave him out there because that's the best opportunity for him to learn. He's a big body and he's a destructive runner. He's going to leave bodies in his wake, but he needs to develop more skills. And by the end of his career, he was leaping high, taking high balls, no worries, like an AFL player would. And so it's these learning opportunities that are maybe, just maybe, passing Ed Cossey by. But look, we've spent a lot of time on Ed, and there are more pressing matters for the Warriors and the fan base and what this team might achieve. I want to ask the question now about the grand final and whether the Warriors can make it still without Luke Metcalf. What is your hunch?
Oh, man.
Can they make it?
Oh, we talking grand final day?
Grand
Sydney.
final day.
Short answer, and man, I've got some mates there. I've got some mates there. I'm gonna say no. Short answer, no.
Man.
I think Luke Metcalf and what he's been able to do with the team has been nothing but fabulous to his performances, and what they've been able to do on the back of their round one, round 3 or 4 against the Storm, and then obviously a few hiccups come up lately with their performance back at Go Media Stadium, now the Brisbane Broncos, and you're seeing, I guess, the pinch of injuries now. You're really seeing the pinch of injuries to key areas in the game. You've had to use Taine Martin as that person to cover all those positions. We speak about how important Wade Egan's to this Warriors team. They can't afford to have anyone else fall over in that spine for them to try and get to grand final day. So my short answer, and I know there'll be a lot of disappointed people, and there's must be people that are going to comment and speak about this. And I just think that it's a no. It's a no, Goran.
Heartbreaking, mate. Heartbreaking. But realistic, I think. If you looked at all of the other top NRL teams and you took out their best forward and their halfback, I think most teams would struggle to make a grand final. Say you take out, I don't know, Adam Reynolds and Payne Haas from the Brisbane Broncos. Do they make a grand final?
Oh, I don't think they could make a grand final without Payne Haas.
If you took Jerome Hughes and Nelson Asofa-Solomona out of the Melbourne Storm, do they make a grand final?
Oh, they're two key players. I don't think so.
Yeah. So
Well, you've seen the importance. I guess if we reflect to their grand finals, the Storm versus Penrith Panthers, you've seen how much they miss someone like Nelson. They had everyone else in the team. But someone like Nelson that attracts 4 defenders, has a presence on the field. The Penrith Panthers knew what they were coming up against. They knew they could handle the Melbourne Storm, but you take those 2 players out, that is a big dent in a winning team. So I hope, Goran, I hope that they go after the next few weeks until they get some cavalry back into the team. But I do find it hard to see them playing on grand final day without their star 7. Luke Metcalf.
Yeah, I'll chuck another one in the mix as well. Moses Leota and Nathan Cleary. Panthers don't make it, right? And so, again, this is what we're faced with at the Warriors. No Mitch Barnett, no Luke Metcalf. Surely they're done.
I think they've got good enough forwards. I think their forwards are strong enough, Goran. I think their forwards are strong enough. But I think Luke Metcalf's been the difference. He's been the difference on the back of the forwards, which you can't have any good halves play any good footy if you don't have a forward pack going forward. So, let's hope that what they have can help this team. But I can't see it without Luke Metcalf.
Blairy, I'm right there with you. However, and this is my hypothetical, and as I've said a couple of times, I'm trying to think like Andrew Webster will be thinking right now. But if I think like myself, I reckon the Warriors could make the grand final still, because we've been talking for a large part of the early season about whether Luke Metcalf should be the starting halfback and why is Te Martin not the starting halfback. They do have a superstar half in their midst, right?
Yeah.
Within their ranks, they've got Te. It's about how you best use them. Now, I don't think we're going to see it for the next few weeks. In fact, for the rest of the season. But if I had my way, I would have a halves pairing of Te Martin and Tanah Boyd, and Chanel Harris-Tavita becomes your 14. However, Chitty's been doing pretty well. You know, he's cemented his spot. It would be one hell of a call for Andrew Webster to make, to say, look, thanks so much for all you've done to this point, but you need to sit down for the betterment of the team. Maybe he would do that. Maybe he would make that call. But I don't see it happening. But I would think that by playing Te Martin for 80 minutes of every game up until finals, that gives you the best possible chance to make a grand final day. That's where they could have like for like. You've got Luke Metcalf, who's been playing the house down, was leading Dallin before it went behind closed doors. He's had the season of his life. But you've also got Te Martin there, and he can easily slot in. And people have short memories. Te was the guy who played that match against the Panthers when everything was against them, and had people talking about Shaun Johnson who. Don't bring Shaun Johnson back. We've got Te Martin now. And like how quickly people have forgotten the ability of this guy. If you gave him an opportunity to start, put him alongside Tanah Boyd, have Chitty on the bench, and he can cover the myriad of roles. I've seen Chitty play fullback in a pre-season game and do it pretty bloody well. And I think even in our first grade as well at a pinch. So he can cover a few positions as well. Maybe he becomes your Dylan Walker. And you've given yourselves the best possible shot of making a grand final still without Luke Metcalf. Yeah,
I think the biggest, the biggest thing now for the Warriors is to try and finish in the top four. That should be the aim. Because they get a second bite at the cherry. I think if they can bring their focus back to what they can control, rather than listening to me and you tell them what's going to happen, I think if they can bring themselves to the
I don't think they'll listen to us, mate.
And being present and back themselves with their game style, with their game flow, to be able to finish in the top four, which they've given themselves the biggest chance. They've given themselves the biggest chance. They're sitting in a really decent position. Now it's just about growing confidence in someone like Tanah, someone like Te, someone like Chanel, and go, hey, this is your team now. You've got to get them there. But I think the heavy reliance goes on someone like James Fisher-Harris, Wade Egan being the most experienced guys through there. But when you got someone like Fish, who's played in 4 grand finals, and won them, and knows how to play in these big games with backs against the wall, I think there's no better person in your team to have on your side when you're going into this back end of the season. I think the biggest thing for them is to have confidence in themselves, that they can get a job done, and back their ability and their game style. That's going to be enough to get them to the GF. But they got to think about what's in front of them rather than listening to you and I tell them they're not going to make it. Well, I said we're not going to make it.
Oh, I think they can make it.
Metcalf.
I think they can make it.
You're saying they're going to make it to the GF.
If they have Te Martin on the field for 80 minutes every week.
So he's got to be he's got to be your 7.
That's how he influences the game.
Yeah. I think luckily they come into a bye, and I think they'll be sitting there crunching the numbers, thinking about how it's going to work. What's what's the bigger picture look like, but then what's the immediate future hold for them as a team. I guess the biggest thing now, Goran, is the leaders come together, which I reckon they would, and talk about best case scenario, who do we want to put in these positions, and then how we're going to move forward as a group and put our faith in whoever comes in and takes that role. But like you said, and like we've said for a long time, Te Martin is a starting half, and I think he could add something to that team moving forward.
He certainly could. Just lastly on the whole Metcalf injury thing, I've been trying to think about some of the silver linings to the dark cloud, because when you think about Metcalf's career, by the time he comes back, he'll be a 27-year-old who's only amassed 41 first grade games, which that's not a great deal. You know, I look at somebody like Tommy Dearden, who's 24 years of age. He's playing Origin. He's represented his nation. Already has a century of games. And so I know that there have been things that have happened along the way. There was the COVID situation that didn't help. There was an ACL back in 2019 for Luke. He broke his leg a couple of years ago, and obviously he's done his ACL again. But I was trying to find these silver linings, as I say, and I could think of two. First of all, he's got a captain in Mitch Barnett who's quite literally going through the same thing at roughly the same time. It was about a month ago that we all saw what happened, and the news came out that he had done a season-ending ACL injury. So he's quite literally not alone in his fight against this surgery and rehabilitation, right? So he's got his co-captain, his captain, he's one of the co-captains, in Mitch Barnett to lean on through this period. So there's one. And then the other one would be the fact that he's a young dad for the first time, and the importance of being with family through this really special time. He and his partner Brody had their first child, I think it was in April. So to have a lot more time with wee bub, that's got to be something really awesome. And I think back to I had my first in December, the December before we went into the COVID lockdown of March or April of 2020, right? And to have that time with my wee one and kind of figure him out, like what do you actually do with this child? How do you take care of him and be with them 24/7 without work to think of? It was really, really cool and very beneficial to me and my wife, Rebecca. So there are two silver linings to the very dark cloud. And Luke, if you are watching and listening, these are things that can be really helpful and uplifting for you.
Well, we don't, as a former player or as when I was playing, you don't spend enough time with your family. Rugby league controls your life. You make a lot of sacrifices, and the ones that miss out the most are either your partner, your wife, your kids, your family. So sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. Yes, no one wants to be injured. Yes, you said it. He gets to do it alongside someone like his co-captain, his captain of the team, Mitch Barnett, being a month apart, but having a teammate there to go through those tough times together, but also getting an opportunity to spend time with your kids, which is one thing. Like when I look back over my time, my oldest son, Goran, never spent a lot of time because I either was away most weekends, toured to the UK with the Kiwis, and missed a lot of those special moments, milestone moments, birthdays, first words, crawling, walking, all those kind of things. So blessing in disguise, I think sometimes, and you look at there's a lot of positives that come with the negatives, and I definitely think being a young father, for him, spending time at home with his loved ones is something special, and he gets to be able to go on that journey with the little one as well.
You needed to feign injury a bit more, mate, or just take the crowbar to the kneecap or something like that.
Wouldn't have played this many games growing if I had faked an injury. I was real selfish growing, but you have to be in the game of rugby league to be able to do what you need to do. People people, you have to be selfish, and sometimes it's our loved ones that miss out on a lot of the times, the special times with you as an adult, as a young kid, as a young man, to be able to go on that journey with your kids.
Yeah, well, you may have been selfish then, but you're absolutely selfless now. And so, yeah, hopefully Luke Metcalf can enjoy this period of time, as devastating as it might be and as devastated as he might feel right now. Yeah, there are a couple of positives that I can think of, and I'm sure he can find many more.
Definitely.
Blairy, it's that time of the week where we go, betcha this happens for round 18, and we blew chunks massively last week, only 4 from 8. The Warriors let us down, so did the Eels, so did the Titans. Who else let us down? Oh,
Sea Eagles.
Sea Eagles.
They let us down because they won.
Yeah. They're like our bogey team, eh?
Definitely.
Whatever we do, they do the opposite.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure how we're going to approach it this week, but let's give it a fair old crack. Betcha this happens for round 18 in the NRL. The Bulldogs paying $1.55 at home to the Broncos, $2.45. Surely that's a blue and white one.
Blue and white.
Gotta be the Dogs. Canberra Raiders up against the Dragons. Raiders $1.30, and the Dragons well and truly outsiders at $3.50. Green Machine, lock it in.
Oh, yeah, lock it in.
Lock it in, the Green Machine. North Queensland Cowboys scraped past the Titans. They're paying $3.60 against the Melbourne Storm, $1.30. Surely it's the Stormers.
Stormers.
Yeah, gotta be. We're picking all the favourites here, mate. Roosters up against the Tigers. It's going to be another favourite. Roosters are almost unbackable. They're $1.26.
Oh, go after that.
$1.26. The Tigers nearly $4. We'll go the Tricolours. And then in the last game, it's come down to this. The away side is the Rabbitohs. They're playing at Four Pines against the Sea Eagles, our bogey team. Am I backing Jazz Tavanga?
Oh, mate. This will be the first time that we've said we're going to go for the Sea Eagles. I reckon we put it on.
Let's do it.
On Sunday Arvo, surely. Get a job done.
We've got a 5-leg multi. It's only paying $4.38.
Oh, my gosh.
It's disappointing, isn't it? Over 5 legs.
That's very bad.
I'm going to put $10 on this.
Oh, you're that confident.
I'm not that confident, but let's just go after it, mate. Let's just go after it like the Warriors are going to go after the rest of the season without Luke Metcalf.
I think, you've been very, very conservative over the 17 weeks. I think it's now time to actually have a crack.
Let's do it, mate. $10 at $4.38, our 5-leg multi. Remember, always bet responsibly. We're using the Betcha app. You should be too. R18 and all that. Blairy, what a dog's breakfast that was. Oh, man. Look, what a way to finish. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe to the channel. League of Our Own here with myself, Goran Paladin, and the big guy, Adam Blair. Until next week, we'll see you later on, eh? Take care.